everyone. Welcome to our manufacturing webinar here, all about the frontline employee experience. My name is Chuck Ghost. I'm a head of community and customer advocacy at First Up. I'm privileged to welcome our customer and my friend Tyler Wenger from TE Connectivity here. Before we get into his session, I just want to kick things off by sharing one of the reasons we do this, which is we know, those of you that are in manufacturing, you know that the frontline employee has never not been critical. Personally, I have a soft spot for the manufacturing world, having worked in internal comms at both General Motors and Rolls-Royce before being in the tech space. And so obviously that frontline experience is so critical, but not just for that employee, whether that's in manufacturing or retail or hospitality. I know we're focused on manufacturing here, but we also need to think about those managers. And I think sometimes those are often a forgotten audience that sit in the middle between the corporate headquarters area and then that frontline employee. And they are often that critical channel that sits in between. And so we know that that omni-channel experience, hitting people at the right time in the right place where they need to be communicated with, is equally as critical for all levels of the organization, but especially the frontline managers and their employees. And that's some of the things we're going to hear about today from Tyler Wenger, Senior Manager of Communications at TE Connectivity. Tyler, welcome to this webinar, and let everyone know, where are you joining us from today?
Yep, thanks, Chuck. So I'm joining today from the capital of Pennsylvania, which is Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, a nice little small city here in the middle of the state.
Any political ads or anything going on in Pennsylvania this time of year, Tyler?
Oh, there's political ads going on all the time, I feel like. But as a father of two toddlers, two young kids, I don't have much time for engaging and digesting said political ads and conversation. So if it is happening, I'm sure more of it's happening than what I'm aware of.
Yeah, and don't jinx it, because they'll probably start throwing those ads into your kids' content.
That's true.
Out there. But yeah, so thanks everyone for joining us today. Great having you here. Please welcome you. Go into the chat and introduce yourself. We oftentimes see that there are either some former colleagues or people that know each other in there. Introduce yourself. Let us know what you do, where you're also joining us from. Tyler mentioned he's joining us from Harrisburg. He's also fresh off a goal-setting session with his fellow communicators there at TE Connectivity. So I might ask about that a little bit later on. But let's go ahead, Tyler, and start getting into the nuts and bolts of what you're here to talk about. You were a part of our Spotlight on Manufacturing event that we did this past spring. And for those, I'm guessing a lot of you may not be familiar with that, we got together all the First Up manufacturing customers together in our office in Chicago and did a day-long event focused on the manufacturing audience. And at that event, Tyler shared with us some of the stuff that they're doing to enhance manager communications and why the manager communication stuff is so critical. Tyler, before we get into some of the data that you have around this and some of the activities that TE Connectivity does, from a personal standpoint, why do you think as a communicator it's so critical to focus communication on that manager population?
Yeah, I think one of the questions I asked the group back in Chicago in the spring was just take a moment and think about your own employee experience or your own employee journey and think through the tough things you were going through in life. Also think through those amazing experiences you had at work or times that you felt like you were on cloud nine. And then think about your relationship with your manager and how that impacted that experience or that journey. And I can only speak for my personal perspective, but I've had great managers throughout my career, and the times that things have been going really well, a lot of that I've been able to attribute to them setting me up for success, knocking down roadblocks and barriers and helping me achieve my goals. And conversely, at other times where maybe things weren't going as well, or I felt frustrated or stressed at work, there might have been some strain on my relationship with my manager. And so one of the conclusions that we came to as we were trying to figure out how we were going to formalize or why we needed to formalize some of our manager comms here at TE, one of the main reasons for that was because managers play such a key and outsized role in the employee experience, which again, we're going to dive into this more today, but they're just so influential in that. And they impact that so much more than any other factor. And we wanted to take advantage of that and capture that influence that they have on employees, and make sure that we were supporting with them and providing the proper channels and opportunities to communicate with them so that they felt more empowered and more prepared to lead their teams. And we're just in the know with what was going on across the enterprise.
You used an interesting word there that I think we shouldn't skip past, which is the influence side. And the term influencer is a very, popular term out there. But if you applied that same concept to managers, they absolutely are, to an audience that oftentimes organizations will say that they struggle reaching or struggle connecting with. That manager is the influencer of that group.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that, I don't know if you want to jump into the next slide, we can just kind of get going here a little bit. But if you click through the animations and go to, it's actually the last stat, I think, is one of the most fascinating ones, which is 1 in 2 adults in the United States have left their job to get away from a manager at some point in their career, so that it would improve their overall life. And that is just fascinating to me. It's Chuck and I are sitting here, we're 2 people. One of us has done that, statistically speaking, at one point in our career, which is just fascinating. So yes, managers do play such an outsized role and have a huge influence on the employee experience. And we don't need to go through all of these stats in detail, but you guys can see the stats here. And just, again, the data tells us this. And whether you know it personally, or I'm sure other people have heard stories about great managers and or terrible managers, but we've got the data to back it up to show that your direct manager or supervisor is going to have a huge impact in how engaged you feel, how included you feel, and your overall job satisfaction. And so we wanted to make sure, again, we were capturing that influence when it comes to communications at TE.
Yeah, I think that 1 in 2 number, if you probably extrapolated that out, I'm sure there's some people who have left multiple jobs because of managers. They're still the same one person, but they've left multiple roles. And I think another interesting stat you have on here is that 3.4 times more engaged. That to me, that's that influencer stat. That's the one where employees feel trusted and supported by their manager, meaning that they've built that line of communication. They trust the information the manager's sharing with them. They trust they can go to their manager and get the information. Imagine if you could 3.4x anything in business, you would invest in that. And that's what it does by empowering your managers.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we wanted to make sure we were doing the best we could to take care of managers as a key stakeholder, as a key influencer group across our enterprise, because managers also directly touch all employees. And while we had been, and still are in many ways, focused on employees, obviously they're our end customer, we recognize managers as a stakeholder group that directly touches 100% of those end customers. So given their reach across the organization and given their influence, we said, all right, we need to do something to make sure we have the right channel set up to communicate with this group.
Yeah, I think I'm now going to trademark, register, and copyright whatever I need to do to coin this influencer term for managers now. But I'll give you credit for it, Tyler, for inspiring me.
All right.
Before we get into what you're doing for managers at TE, I'm curious, did you get any feedback from managers that pushed you down this path, or what were they telling you, or what were they experiencing? You're like, we really need to invest in this.
Yeah, no direct feedback from managers specifically at TE saying, hey, we need to do a better job with this. But it was really, we were recognizing the fragmented landscape across TE. And Chuck, if you want to go to the next slide, we can kind of jump into the presentation more here and pull up the first problem statement that we saw there. But I guess to lay the groundwork for everyone, just so you know, kind of the size and scope of TE, we are a global manufacturing company. We have around 90,000 employees all around the globe, do business in, I want to say, around 60 to 100 countries. So, a very global organization. We've got 10 different business units. We create products that go into automobiles, airplanes, the energy grid, medical devices, and a whole host of things like that. So a very dispersed workforce as well. And one of the communication gaps we noticed is, again, manager communications were very fragmented. They were ad hoc, not scheduled, not consistent, and primarily driven from our human resources teams, specifically the talent management team. And so, we were essentially doing an audit of the communications that are going to managers and just recognized the inconsistency there and how we didn't have a formal process and way to consistently engage with them and make sure that they had the materials they needed to lead their team, and to make sure, again, that they could influence and activate important programs that were happening at TE. Because often, if you're an employee and you get an email about something and you're not familiar with it, your first line of defense to ask a question is to go directly to your manager. So we wanted to do a better job in making sure that they were more prepared. I think your question was around, did we hear feedback from any managers specifically? And again, while we didn't get that directly from managers at TE, certainly I'm sure many of you have heard some of the data points out there on how middle management feels stressed, how they've got a lot going on. They've got to manage up to their leaders while, taking care of their team below them. Honestly, a deciding point here might be the fact that, when we started focusing on this was 1 year after I had first become a manager or a people leader. So maybe it was even me recognizing the challenges that managers have to go through. As a very personal journey for me at that point. But another data point that I want to highlight here is we also recognized in our First Up platform, in the was significantly engaging with our content, at least from an open and viewership perspective. And so, what we're doing, just to clarify a little bit, we are syncing HR data with our HR information system into the First Up platform so that we can communicate with targeted and personalized groups. And so one of those data points that we have is whether or not an employee leads people, so whether or not they're a manager or not. And again, we recognize that group was viewing a lot of content and we were reaching them with a lot of content. And so we said, all right, they have a huge influence on employees. They're engaged and viewing content on our platform. Let's set up some formal processes to make sure that we are communicating with them in a coordinated approach.
No, that's awesome. And I think that a lot of times the fact that that they're a hungry audience, that they want to stay informed, probably for themselves, as you experience as a manager, wanting them to stay in the loop and know what's happening so that they can then be a good leader for their teams and their people. And we can move along to the next solution, which you all implemented.
Yep. So this is where we're going to talk through a little bit. I'm certainly someone who likes to get in the weeds on things. So hopefully some of you do as well. And we'll give you some screenshots coming up here in the slides on what do we actually do to help solve for this. So there were three main things that we did. One of the key items here was creating a centralized SharePoint page that we titled Manager Central on our SharePoint site. So we're a Microsoft shop. All of our online employees, when they log in, they have SharePoint pulled up as their homepage for their web browser, and we created a link directly in our global navigation directly to this page. And on this page, we were pulling in key resources from our HR information system. We have a content amplifier that has embedded news content from First Up. And then just other resources and information for managers, which we never had before. So this is now, again, coordinating and providing a centralized hub for managers to come to one location, one spot, and they can get the news, they can get the resources and everything they need to do their job as a people leader. Another key piece of that was publishing content to a new channel or a new topic in our First Up platform, specifically for managers, with manager-specific content. So we had content where, whether it's giving them an advance notice of an important program or something that's coming up, whether it's giving them some talent management tips and tricks related to our purpose and strategy, we are now sharing more news and content with them than we ever had before, and trying to be more consistent with that and working with some of our stakeholders across the organization to do that. And then lastly, the third key element there was a monthly Manager Central newsletter, which is wrapping up all of those news articles that we're sharing throughout the month and sending them out as an email directly to managers, and it hits their inbox at the beginning of every month. And so that way they know, consistently they're going to be able to get this information, this news and information directly to their inbox, quickly be able to access it. But if they need that information on a more regular basis, certainly they can go to the First Up platform, which is a mobile app and also available on the web, or they can view it on the SharePoint site, or again, they can get it in their inbox. So setting up these consistent channels and these consistent delivery methods for employees, for managers to stay up to date with what's going on.
I'm going to put you on the spot here with one question. Yeah. I'm curious with we talked about the content being fed in the content amplifiers, which is going into SharePoint. You talked about the emails that are going out from First Up, as well as the web experience and the mobile app that is also available. Off the top of your head, do you know where managers are accessing this information? Does the email drive a lot of activity? Is it more of a routine thing? They open up, they check their portal. Like, what are you seeing from the data side? Because one of the benefits of the First Up platform is because we're the one source of truth feeding out, you're able to get all that data back in one spot.
Yep. We are definitely very email heavy here at TE, and it's still a very popular channel for our online employees to engage with. So all of our managers would have a TE email address and have computer access. So we see the most significant viewership and engagement from them via email. Outside of that, web would be our number 2 spot. So again, very SharePoint heavy. And with those content amplifiers, when an employee or manager clicks on a piece of content, it automatically uses single sign-on, logs them into the platform, and then they can view that article. So email and web would be our top 2 channels by far, but certainly, we do see some small engagement as well from managers on the mobile app side, which, I think one of the key elements you touched on before we even started here was just the importance of frontline employees. And so our frontline employees who don't have an email address can log in and access our platform via a mobile app. That's we're constantly struggling and working to overcome the challenge of reaching as many of them as we can. And so manager communications really dovetails that to say, we're never going to be able to reach 100% of our frontline employees and convince them to log into the mobile app. So let's do the best we can there, but let's also congruently make sure we're taking care of managers so that way they can help cascade and pass down any important information throughout the organization.
Yeah, I would imagine the managers that do use the mobile, I bet their employees then are probably more likely to use mobile because they see that behavior and they see that engagement, and it's easy to then be like, oh no, here it is, it's right, it's right here.
Yep.
And then let's go into some of the benefits that that TE has seen.
Yeah. So I don't know that I need to click down into any of these too specifically, but I think the biggest one just comes around, impact, and we highlighted that already, and we've got apparently the word of the day here is influence. We've got that in there, but it's really the benefit we're seeing is taking advantage of managers as a key stakeholder to have an impact on employee engagement and the employee experience. Selfishly, as a communicator, I love the last one there. Like, any place we can drive efficiencies is huge, and something that's important to us as a manufacturing company. I'm sure all of you are familiar with lean processes and programs and standard work and continuous improvement. But when we can do that on the comm side as well, it can free us up to focus on other more strategic initiatives. So certainly saw a lot of efficiencies from our perspective in being able to publish an article once, it shows up on the app, on the web, on the SharePoint site. You go to create the newsletter. All you got to do is select, you click a few buttons to select the articles you want. They automatically flow into the newsletter template that you have, and makes it easy to send it out through First Up. So I've got another slide later that has some more buzzwords on it where we'll talk through some of those more benefits again. But
well, I think
just wanted to highlight a few of them here.
Buzzword or not, if you're in manufacturing and you improve efficiency in anything, it's not buzzwordy anymore. Like that's the stuff that matters in the manufacturing space. And as you said, you've got some screenshots that show up just how you've got this structured for managers.
Yeah. So what we're showing here, this is our SharePoint site. This is one of the first screenshots that we have. And apologies that it's small for everyone, but I always enjoy seeing what are other First Up customers doing, or what are other communicators in the industry doing. So hopefully you all find this helpful. But you can see what the format here to our SharePoint site. So the first thing to call out there, the orange box, we've got some key resources that are linking to our HRIS site. And what we did is we actually worked with the HR technology team to look at the data from the previous 2 years to say, what are the most popular links that managers are clicking on within our HRIS platform? So they gave us that data and we said, that's what we're going to put directly on the SharePoint site. If those are the most popular links, that's what we want to make the easiest to access for our managers on this new page. And then directly below that is where we have the manager content. So again, this is the content amplifier from First Up, pulling in all of that content directly for managers that is specifically targeted to them. So it's a personalized view for them. And just another note to add here, if anybody's using SharePoint and SharePoint Online, one of the great benefits you can do is targeting of certain items. So we're actually targeting this page within our global navigation directly to managers. So only managers, and I think our HR partners as well can see it, but making it as easy as possible, really thinking about that user experience and making it as easy as possible for them to get to this page, see the news, and see those key resources that they need.
Yep. So we talked about the web being critical, and then you also talked about the email. And it's so interesting to me, Tyler. Every time we talk about email, people get very apologetic about it. They're like, oh gosh, we know it's this, but it still works. There's a reason email still works. And so it's actually a good thing. I think what we've seen is where people abuse it or overuse it. But I think here you've got a great example of the opposite of that.
Yeah. I think, having the right content strategy and targeting strategy is important. But, how many times per day would you say you check your email?
Oh, 10 times an hour.
Yeah,
probably.
Exactly.
I'm on email. Yeah.
And same here. And obviously everybody has different user behaviors, and everybody's going to be different, but email is not dead and is still very popular at TE. Every organization is going to have a different culture, but we recognize that as TE as, hey, it's a really critical way for us to communicate with our online employees. Not, all of our employees have email. About half of our workforce does and half of our workforce doesn't. So it's important to have an omni-channel approach and communicate with employees where they're at. But yes, email is very much still alive. So just wanted to share a screenshot here of what our newsletter looks like. I wasn't able to include the whole thing. At the bottom, we have a inclusion and focus section that we work with our I&D team on to make sure, we're putting in key metrics there that are important and impact managers. And then we also have a what's coming up section as well at the bottom, just to keep them up to date of any events or programs that are going to be coming on the horizon. And then I'll talk through the next slide too, if you want to jump to that one.
I have a question on this one, Tyler, if that's all right.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So as I was looking at this, I think this is an example of the importance of replicating your brand internally. So when I was looking at this slide, it reminded me of a conversation we had at Attune London with Lotus, another manufacturer. And she had talked about that externally, their brand looked and felt one way, and then internally, it was garbage. Like the two sides weren't balanced. It didn't reflect one another. And so when they started using First Up and Studio, all of a sudden their internal emails started to look and feel just like the external brand. And so then there was alignment in the brand. And that's what I'm seeing here with your email. It's not just your text-based Outlook style email. You guys have carefully curated a design that's actually really easy and good to read.
Yeah. And that's definitely been an advantage for us in convincing other communicators throughout the organization, even just other people who are sending emails, to say, hey, I want my email to look like that email, whether it's an external email, whether it was one that our team had sent through First Up. And so what we're able to do is create templates within the First Up platform. The First Up platform also, I think you get 2 brand colors. So it has our brand colors that we want to use, makes it really easy to format some of the different text colors and things within the platform. But we've gotten a lot of good feedback from internal stakeholders saying, hey, that email looks good. I want mine to look like that. And it's very easy to help someone set up that email template, make it look nice, make it look pretty, and make it not look like somebody just copied from a Word document and pasted it into Outlook and then just sent it out to 10,000 employees.
Yeah, I get that that's not the most important thing when it comes to communication, but I do think it is often overlooked, or we don't recognize the importance of the quality of the way it looks and the way it
Yeah.
reads and the structure.
Hmm.
And you're not just, like you said, pasting in a Word doc in there. We'll get moving
Yeah.
along to your
Yeah.
next one here. This is a
Yeah.
another
And
great example of bringing that brand inside.
so this is an example of a message that was sent out to managers. And one of the things that was really important for me was based on the data that middle managers have no time, very stressed out, and just a lot going on. And so one of the requirements that I made for all of our messages is that they all have a too long didn't read section at the very top. So we call it key takeaways. We limit it to a few short bullet points that summarize the entire message. So if managers don't read anything else and they just read those key takeaways, they're still going to understand what is being asked of them and what any of the calls to action are for them as a leader. So if you guys aren't doing something like this in key messages or at all, I'd encourage you to start thinking about it. We don't do this all the time for all employee communications. We've done it a few times, but it's something that we've gotten really good feedback on from managers saying how easy it is to just quickly digest content and understand what you're trying to tell to them in a really quick way. So we've seen some great success from this as well.
Yeah, I think this absolutely feeds into the skimming that we all do. Like, very few people are truly, let's be honest about this, are reading every single
Exactly.
word that is in there. We are skimming for the information. We do this same type of thing in our Community Watch, which is our customer newsletter that we send out from our customer community, where we have like the bullets at the top and then it goes into the depth. So people are just trying to hunt and find for things. So here
Yep.
again, this is bringing that external marketing world that they do with newsletters internally because of the behavior. We're trying to replicate that behavior that people have, and knowing that people are going to skim, let's make it skimmable for them.
Yep. Absolutely. So I think the next slide is where I've got all the buzzwords on here, but I just really wanted to talk about why we did this and some of the benefits again that we've seen. But really, the reason we did this was to deliver support to managers. We wanted to give them the information and resources that they needed to help them succeed and to help them communicate better to their teams. So, one of the key themes behind this whole project for our team was around support. Empowerment was also really important. We, again, wanted to capture that influence and the impact that managers had, and we wanted them to help be change agents for us, whether it be the introduction of a new program, whether it be an event that was coming up that we wanted employees to get excited about, just different strategic initiatives. We wanted to make sure that they had the tools and resources they needed to feel comfortable encouraging and championing these types of events and programs for employees. I think alignment is another big one, in that managers now at TE are more aligned with what's going on, aware of what's going on, aligned around the goals that we have for different programs. And I think that's important, because I think expectations definitely come into play on a lot of this, and making sure managers understand, hey, we're not asking you to do something crazy. Let's say you have an employee engagement event. We're not asking you to be the one to go take a bunch of pictures and submit them and help us move the needle in maybe a place or a way that we're trying to move the needle. But you can do these small things that can help us as well. So just making sure that they're aligned with what the expectations might be of the leadership team or the communications team or the team who's running that program. And then the last one's my favorite one, ties back to my first comment of think about your employee experience. The whole goal here, and the ultimate goal, I think, for manager communications is to improve the employee experience. That's the end goal. We're going to take care of managers because we want managers to take care of employees. So pardon me for having all the cliche different buzzwords on here, but I do think these are important. And I think it's something that as communicators, we're striving to do by delivering good communications. Really, we're trying to achieve all of these and ultimately improve the employee experience.
So I have one comment and a question for you on
Yeah.
this slide, Tyler. Before we began, we talked about my Bengals fandom back here. We have a couple wear orange games this year. So
Mm,
seeing this site, I might need
mm.
to have you send me some TE gear
I was gonna say you
to
need some TE
wear
swag.
to wear at the Bengals games. Second question is, do you have access to that giant hat that is in the
I,
experience slide? And why are you not wearing it for this call?
it is literally 25 feet right over there in a bin. I wish I would have had it here. It makes my head look
That's
so
good. I
tiny.
like that.
The thing is massive.
Oh, I've seen people wear it before. That's
Yeah,
a good swag
yeah,
item for photos. That's good.
yeah.
That's good.
So lastly, I always appreciate joining calls or webinars like this where you have some practical takeaways or things that you can actually apply to your daily work. So this is a hodgepodge list of just some different things that you all might be able to consider if you're interested in implementing some improvements to manage your communications. And even if you're not, there's some really small things that you can do. So, feel free to take a look at these. Some of these were similar examples that I shared. Some of them are different things to think about, such as, hey, have a specific town hall or a webcast for managers and show them that you care about them and you want to make sure they're supported, and have leaders within HR or the senior management team join those and help answer questions from managers and talk through things that are important to them. Have different feedback channels for managers to share feedback, so that way you can tailor communications and programs specifically to them. So just a few items for you all to consider here, and then a few questions as well that you could ask your teams, whether it be your communications function, whether it be leaders at your company, whether it be leaders in HR. I think these are, again, just different questions that you can consider to start to evaluate, are we thinking about and supporting managers in the way that we should? And we might get to this in some of the questions. I'm excited to dive in here and happy to answer any questions that you guys have. But in many ways at TE, this is far from done. We set up the highway to communicate with managers, but now we're looking to add the rest stops, add the billboards, and really take care of them and support them, and provide some more trainings and resources for them to help them do the best that they can in leading their teams and being a positive influence for the programs that we're making them aware of. So yeah, just some things to consider here.
Yeah, I think they're all great. And selfishly, I want to call out that these are specific things that the First Up platform can help you be successful with. So often when we have new customers join, they've talked about they've had trouble creating audiences of just managers. You have to go to IT to get a list, and you don't know if the list is accurate or not. Whereas, as Tyler pointed out,
Mm-hmm.
by integrating with your HRS, this is now a dynamic audience. One day somebody isn't a manager, they do not see manager information. The next day they are, that automatically shows up for them. There's no management of that. Let the HRIS system manage that for you. The First Up platform helps you create those audiences and make them dynamic. So whether it's different band levels that you talked about, the feedback channels, especially those advanced notices, the fact that you
Mm-hmm.
can schedule content and say like, hey, this is the message that's going out at 9 a.m. Eastern. At 7 a.m. Eastern, we're sending a heads up to our managers, maybe put a little embargo thing on it or something, but say
Yeah.
like, hey, you're getting a heads up on this. That actually builds trust between the company and managers then at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, one thing I wanted to touch on that you mentioned there was, if a person's not here on day one, but joins a company on day two as a manager, they now, with the First Up platform and this topic for managers, they can now see all of the old content that was published. So for example, I was an employee and then I got promoted to be a people leader and a manager. Without at that time we didn't have the processes that we've set up. And so when that switch happened, I wasn't able to view all of the emails that went out in the past 6 months or the past year, or I didn't know what, they could have sent a message the day before that said, hey, we've got this great training for managers. Unless somebody forwards that to me as a new manager, I'm never going to see that. And so this is another advantage to having the SharePoint site and the First Up topic is you have an archive of all of those messages that you've sent out. So if you have an employee who gets promoted or you hire a new manager in a position and they come in and get started, they can view all the content that was sent last month, 2 months ago, last year, whatever it might be. So that's also another advantage, and people can then go back and get caught up with what's going on.
Yeah, it actually becomes a true resource for people. In
Yep.
fact, you could even get
Yep.
as fancy, and maybe this is where you're heading down the road, Tyler, of just saying, hey, new managers, for the first 60 days of being a new manager, you get access to this other content over here that's just getting you set up. And after that 60
Yeah.
days, you're off into the new world. So
Yep.
all that is possible. This is fantastic advice.
Yep.
Tyler, thank you for sharing this with us. Feel free to use a Q&A. Some of you did submit questions ahead of time. So if questions popped in your head during Tyler's examples, please feel free to go into Q&A and leave those questions. But let's get into the questions that were submitted ahead of time. This is more of a broader question, Tyler, than just managers, but managers are included in this.
Yep.
How do you ensure digital inclusivity? I love this word, digital inclusivity for frontline workers who might have limited access to intranet, mobile app, internal
Chuck, you still there?
chats. Oh, did I cut out? Am I back? Did we lose Tyler? Oh, are you back?
Oh,
Am I back?
you're back.
Both of us back? Okay, we're back. Oof, good. That's a close one. Let me go back to my question then. Thanks for being patient with me there.
Yeah.
How do you ensure digital inclusivity for frontline workers with their limited access to intranet, mobile apps, and internal chat? So obviously this platform is available to all 90,000 employees. So how do you promote that inclusivity? How do they find out about the tool as an option to them?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's important to recognize that all employees will not engage on all of the channels or all of the platforms. And so we certainly recognize that. And that was one of the reasons why we ended up choosing First Up as a partner, because what we really appreciated about First Up is the efficiencies we get in the ability to create content one time and then publish it across multiple channels. So, to answer this question, less of ensuring digital inclusivity and more providing multiple ways for employees to connect with company news. So through First Up, we have an employee mobile app. They can also view that on the web, though, to be clear, the app is the easiest option for them, but it's also the most contentious in many ways, where employees feel like or concerned that the company might be, big brother looking over their shoulder, having access to their phone. None of that is true, but those are some concerns that some employees have. So we're never going to get all the employees to log in and access content on our app. But we're also tied in with our digital signage screen. So at all of our manufacturing sites, we have communications screens or digital signage screens that are sharing the same news and information with employees. It can be local news about what's happening at the site. It could be what's going on within their business or what's going on globally, but they can also view that content as well. So we work with the local teams to position those screens at places where they log in or log out for the day, swipe their badge to start working in the cafeteria or canteen. So trying to position them strategically where employees are going to view that content. But digital signage is a big way that we communicate with employees as well. And then other digital channels as well, like our SharePoint site, like email and things like that. So, I think when I think about this question, it's just giving our frontline employees as many ways to engage as possible, because they don't have email. So we don't have a workaround around that unless our IT teams are willing to fork out millions of dollars for Microsoft licenses to give them that capability. So let's set up as many channels as we can to include our frontline workers. And then with that, as I mentioned earlier, let's lean on managers. Let's lean on local HR. Let's make sure that they're also cascading and pushing down those messages to their teams. So that way, we're reaching employees through a variety of channels. But that's at least how I think of digital inclusivity at TE.
I think the thing that we often forget about is what a colossal change this is for a lot of employees who honestly have never had the ability to engage. They've never even had the option of accessing communication out there directly from the company, let alone participating in it. We didn't even talk about user-generated content and people
Yeah.
commenting and sharing, all those other things that can happen. It wasn't even available to them. So I think we also need to keep in mind it's an awesome change, but it is a change, and we know change takes time for people to adopt it. So I think that's a great answer. The next question we had was around GDPR and the First Up platform is GDPR certified, but how's that come up with a lot of your global locations, Tyler? And then how does that help the platform knowing that it's GDPR certified?
Yeah, so honestly, it doesn't come up very much in the sense that it came up a lot, and there was a lot of work that went into that with our legal teams when we went through the contract process to start partnering with First Up. So while yes, that is absolutely important, a lot of that legwork was done before we started using the tool. And I think, I don't know why I was going to say it gives us some street cred with employees or within HR. Certainly, countries like Germany, there's, I want to. Can't hear you. Oh, can you hear me now?
I think we're both back now. I think one of us is having some spotty connections there.
Yeah. I'm not sure. That time it seemed like it could have been on my side. I don't know. Though I saw Karen's comment that she. But yeah.
Next thing we want
to summarize,
that came up in a question was around mobile, and you talked about that's a big change. I think people think like, yes, apps great. There's not one app to serve them all. So people have different comfort levels with different apps. Like you would never do your banking through one app and purchasing through another. But talk about, even some of the success you've had with employee adoption of mobile, or what are you seeing on that side of the house of people benefiting from mobile?
Yeah, mobile adoption is always a topic of interest for us. Again, we had a goal setting conversation today with our comms leadership team, and one of the topics was how much emphasis do we put this year on frontline employee mobile adoption, because we want to reach all employees and it's really important to us, but it takes a lot of work. You need to make sure that IT is involved and with the right access, and HR gets involved to make sure that they have their password and all of this. So it can be very challenging, but certainly very rewarding as well. One of the things that we've tried to lean into with mobile is we originally called ourselves the King app, transitioning a bit more now to Hub app, in the sense that at our company, and maybe this might be the same for some of the listeners today, but we have so many different apps for payroll, for viewing your paycheck, for Concur and credit card statements, things like that. Our HRIS system has an app. So there's all these different apps. There's probably like 20 different apps, and none of them are talking to each other or working with each other or supporting each other to get employees to use each other's app, except for us. And so again, while initially we're going to say, hey, we're the King app, like come here, and that's where you can get all the information you need, we've transitioned more to Hub app to say, hey, all you have to do is download, we call it our MyTE app. And when you log in there, we'll have links, we'll have resources, we'll direct you out to all of the other apps that you're ever going to need at TE. And so that nature and having a platform that can do that can tie into them. I know there's some direct integration capabilities to tie into different systems. We haven't done much of that, but even just having a place within the app to say, here's how you can view ADP to view your paycheck. Here's the link to download Concur with instruction steps on what you might need to do. We found to be very beneficial and something that we've really appreciated and has helped increase adoption on mobile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard the hub, I think, is a great example. I've heard other people also talk about it as like they're the town square. They're the ones
Mm-hmm.
in the middle pulling everyone together. But if you look in the town
Yeah.
square, you can see all the other things around you to direct you where you need to
Yeah.
go,
I
all the
like
other
that. Mm-hmm.
stores. So yeah, definitely a community-minded approach. And then one question I have for you, um, Tyler, is one of the things you talked about focusing on was the difference between informational communication and educational communication. And you chose to focus on informational at this point. Why was that the important focus?
Yeah. Again, we really viewed that as the first phase, the first process of this journey. So I used the highway versus the billboard highway analogy earlier, right? Like I view informational communication with managers, which to me is keeping managers aware of what's going on, keeping them aware of the important things that are coming up, versus educational. I view that as more training, support, and here's how follow this course to become a better leader, or um,
Mm-hmm.
just training programs is what I view as educational. So we wanted to build the highway first, make sure that cars could actually drive on it, which is what I'm calling our informational communication, making sure we actually get messages to managers, and they could understand what was going on, and they would know what to expect. And then after that, so again, I view this as a phase two, and I think something we're really going to work on in the coming year is, all right, now let's add some rest stops. Let's add some billboards to this highway. Let's start working more closely with our HR partners and talent management to say, what resources do we need to share with managers so that they can be a better leader? What challenges are we noticing from leaders that we want to address to help our business succeed? So that was our mindset is, let's make sure we have the right processes and capabilities in place before we really start working on some of the education and training that can be delivered to managers, which honestly, much of that is outside of our team's control. So in many ways, it was us setting up the right systems so that our other teams then can take advantage of that and start running with that.
And then one final question for you, Tyler.
Mm-hmm.
You take a step back. You've been one of the most critical architects of MyTE, if not the most critical architect of MyTE in building this out. What are you most proud of when you step back and look at the work the team has done?
Oh man, that's a very good question. I think it'd be hard not to give somewhat of an overarching answer of just this idea around previously, before we started partnering with First Up, we had a lot of different tools, from an email platform to a digital signage platform to a mobile platform to SharePoint. And so we have really transitioned to only using First Up that encompasses all of those. And not only has that helped our team, but we have a network of around 400 content creators at our
Mm-hmm.
company who communicate with their audiences. And so just this idea that from where we've come from 4 years ago, before we were using First Up, to where we are now, the efficiencies that we've been able to drive, the consistency in what the messages look like has been vastly improved. And so I hope this answers even makes sense to people, because in many ways there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, right, to support a community of content creators, and just the work we've done and some of the training and processes and how we've tried to make this easier for them, but also for our team, has been massive. And honestly, one of the biggest benefits there has been all of the data and analytics in one place versus email open rates in the email platform, SharePoint views and SharePoint, mobile app views and mobile. And now it's all combined into one centralized location, has just been massive for us and has driven so much. Again, I've used this term a lot, but efficiency across the enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
And so just something we've been extremely proud of, and something we want to keep leaning into, again, so that we can take that time to focus on other high level important priorities.
Yeah, and you should be proud, Tyler, of the work. As someone who knows the amount of creativity and concentration and dedication that comms teams put into this, as I step back, which I have the privilege of doing and looking at, we're very fortunate to work with hundreds of great customers around the world. And seeing the success that you and the comms team and the leadership at TE have had to build my TE, not for yourself, but for those 90,000 employees out there, the investment you've made is absolutely paying off for the rest of the organization. So congratulations to you and the team for the success you built. And I know it doesn't, I'm a bit cliche when I say this, it doesn't end with a period. We know there's still
That's right.
so much more
That's
work
right.
to be done. You keep at it time and time again. But thank you for all that you do for TE. And again, thank you for joining us here for this webinar today. Thanks to all the attendees. If you have any other questions that come up, please reach out to your First Up contact. You can reach out to me. You can also contact Tyler directly if you want. But with that, we will wrap things up. Thanks everybody for joining us today. I hope this has been a great session for you. Thank you, Tyler. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Chuck, and thank you all.
All right, bye everyone.
Take care, all.